Hello, everyone, and welcome to Jubilee Street Music Podcast, Season 2, Episode 1. Here at the top, wanted a few housekeeping things. As you can see, if you've listened before, this is our first episode without Jake. If you listened to our last episode on finishing Jubilee Street, he went into this a little bit. He is leaving to focus all his time into doing his Curtis reviews, into doing the movie TV thing. And I encourage anyone to follow him over there if you're into that kind of stuff. Blue, the intern dog, sadly has followed him. I don't know in what capacity she's working for Curtis Reviews, but she's doing something over there. But that gave an opportunity to Buffy the HR dog, who is now Buffy the assistant. She's getting a pay raise. I'm making double. Everything's going great over here. I fully support Jake for putting all his eggs into one basket. However, I will continue to divide up my free time into 100 different creative avenues. This is what I do. So today on Jubilee Street, we are talking about 10th album from PJ Harvey, I Inside the Old Year Dying. Say it once more so it sticks. I Inside the Old Year Dying.
There was a podcast named Jubilee Street.
This is PJ Harvey's first album since 2016, Hope 6 Demolition Project. That was an album that was pretty political, going from the United States, issues of housing, to Afghanistan and the Middle East. Her album before that was sort of an anti-war album. You have her, personal albums from the 90s. We're moving into more narrative writing. She's done a lot of different types of music lyrically and instrumentally. This is no different. This is an album based on a long-form narrative poem she wrote called Orlam, which tells the story of a 1 year of a 9-year-old's life in PJ Harvey's home of Dorset, England. I've not read this poem. In this house, we're not allowed to read PJ Harvey poetry. We had her first book of poems. I believe Jake gifted it to us, and Buffy the assistant ate it. She likes her music, that has been confirmed, but something about the poetry is just a visceral, carnal, canine reaction where she just has to eat it. So it's just best to not have it in the house. Maybe I can sneak it on the Kindle on the phone. But as of now, I've not read it. But yeah, the album is based on this poem. The album has 12 songs. I don't think they directly tied months, but there is a lot of calendar type, there's July, August, autumn. There's a lot of words that suggest the passage of time. And the passage of time is a big theme on this album, with it inherently being timeless. There's no era that the poem or this album is tied down to. There's a lot of lyrics just a very medieval or even ancient type of setting, but then you have lyrics like Pepsi Fizz, School Bus, peanut butter and banana sandwiches. In terms of this woman Elvis character that appears over and over, there's some modern phrases, some modern words mixed in with everything that makes you feel like you're going in and out of different eras in the same place. I'd say the biggest thing that stands out once you start to sink your teeth into this album is the dialect, is the phrasing. She learned this almost forgotten dialect of her home of Dorset, and used a lot of these words. Words like Wordle, not the game, slowy, zingin, lonesome, lonesome with a W after the L, twanketum, tummet, proofied. It sounds like I'm just making things up. This is the verbiage of the album, and more. And I think PJ Harvey did that intentionally. I mean, obviously she did it intentionally, but one, as a way to connect to her home, her birthplace. but also is a test of her prowess as a poet. She gave a interview on NPR where she sort of talked about the nature of poetry, how you don't have to understand every word to understand the poem. And she thought a lot of these words kind of had like an onomatopoeia kind of quality where just the sound of the word viscerally you feel what it means. I guess I don't know what was in her head, but I think it worked. I think this album, once you give it some time, it's challenging. But after repeated listens, I think you start to feel what was being expressed. You feel this childlike wonder and curiosity. There's a lot of lyrics, phrases, questions. It feels like a different mind frame than PJ Harvey has ever expressed before, as does every album. And I think there's a not identity, but sort of the breakdown of gender identity shows up in some of these lyrics where you're not sure if something is feminine or masculine, which is by design. In that same interview, she talks about when she listens to music, or she feels like everything about her identity goes away. She's just a thing existing with art, and I think I mean that's a beautiful sentiment. I think that is part of this feminine quality to poetry, and I wanted to bring up something that I think is the exact opposite because it comes from Ernest Hemingway. I think it's the for better or for worse, probably worse, sort of a pillar of masculinity in literature. He had this iceberg theory where when you are constructing a story, you build up these backstories and these things that go on behind the scenes, and you don't put them into the narrative. But because you know they're there, it makes for a more enriching experience for the reader. And I mean, I believe that uh, should be true with all of my heart, whether it be music or TV or novels, whatever it is. You put in extra work on the back end, and even though it doesn't show up in the final product, it makes the thing better because you thought about it. And I think this album is a great example of the iceberg theory. I think PJ Harvey probably built whole worlds out of single lines in these songs, and even though we don't know what they are, it makes the song. You can. This is just one of those albums where you can tell she put her heart and soul into everything, and even though you might not be able to parse out each individual word what it means, the finished product. I mean, it will move you. It might not the first time you listen to it, but once you let it wash over you and you grow familiar with these songs, I find them to be very powerful. Some of my favorite songs, I think there's a section in the middle of the album, the Nether Edge, and then the title track, "I Inside the Old You're Dying." I think that one-two punch is incredible. And then the second to last song, "A Child's Question August," or sorry, "A Child's Question July." Wonderful song and a wonderful album. One last thing I wanted to bring up is a recent interview I heard, not with PJ Harvey, but with Jason Isbell, done by fellow podcaster, fellow colleague, Yossi Saleh, where they were talking about how as people age, musicians specifically, the ones that seem to stay relevant, stay making great stuff, sort of move away from rock and roll, typically into country music, or maybe in this case with this album, folk music. And Jason Isbell, I think, had a great idea as to why that was. He said that he thought of rock and roll as music that is best made by young people because it is about singular feelings, like in the moment, like strong emotions. You're 16 and you're in love, and you've never been in love before. You have no prior love to compare to, so it's everything. That emotion is your whole mind at that time. As you get older, in 40s, 50s, 60s, you still feel emotions, obviously, but you have a whole lifetime experience to compare them to. They're trying to make that rock and roll song about that fleeting moment just gonna ring hollow. And instead, he thought that country music, folk music, was better suited to narrative songs, which is better suited to older people when writing about the passage of time. And I just thought that was perfect with this album being a pretty big swing for her to put her shoes into a 9-year-old child and to tell the story of the passage of a year, um, cycles of nature, the cycles of seasons, cycles of life. I just think this format was great for this idea. Everything clicked. Now, here at the end, season 2 of Jubilee Street, we're still not going to do grades. I don't feel right doing them. I don't think it's my place to say this thing's an A, this thing's a B. Who am I? But it is fun to give some sort of verdict at the end. So what we're going to do here, season 2, is every album we review, me and Buffy are going to hunker down, compare notes, and we're going to tell you what food item this album is. We're going to get into the Jubilee Street lab and make it. So today, this album, I Inside the Old Year Dying, PJ Harvey, we wanted to go with something, had to be timeless, had to be nuanced, had to be crucial to the diet in all eras. So what we chose was bread, but not any kind of bread. We went with a dark rye loaf, something a lot of people don't like, but if you give it some time, if you grow accustomed to the taste, you sit there and really chew it and think about it. There's all these subtle, hidden flavors that a white bread doesn't have. We went with a dark rye loaf, strawberry preserves. Buffy, the assistant, already took a bite out of it. Something that has always been a part of humanity. Because I think she tried to make something timeless and essential and succeeded, honestly. So before we leave, Jake was usually the one who did the plugs. I don't know if that's something we will always do here now. But with this being the first episode without him, I just wanted to real quick say we have an email at jubileestreetpod@gmail.com. We are on Instagram as well. I wasn't always the best at keeping up with that stuff. Now that it's just me, I will be on there way more. Sorry to anyone I've ever ignored. But we'll be more communicative on there. And if anyone has any feedback, any ideas, anything you want to see, please let me know. I want this to be a back and forth in this transition period as we figure out what this podcast is going to look like in the future. So, here at the end, all left to do is say peace out.